Hello, you're watching West Bloomfield 911. I'm Officer Rick, and on behalf of Chief Mike Patton and my brothers and sisters in the West Bloomfield Police Department, welcome to another show. It is always my great pleasure to introduce my partner to my right. Welcome, Officer Miguel, to the show. How are you, Miguel?
Great.
And of course, as you all know, it's a little thing David and I have going with each other, but you, of course, know him as Officer David McNealy. And I am really proud to introduce someone that I have a lot of respect for, that I've gotten to know over the last couple years. Please welcome Dr. Henry Maicki, Medical Director of Reverence Home Health and Hospice. Doc, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Welcome, Doc.
Thank you so much.
Well, we're glad to have you here, Doc. Please don't run away. We are going to highlight an employee of the police department. So, Miguel, it's all yours.
Hi, guys. Take a look up at your screen. This one actually is near and dear to me, Phil Pacheco. He's one of our newer officers. He's been with us for about 3 months, and he happens to be one of my recruit officers, so I've spent some pretty intense time with him. Phil will probably tell you that. Guys, again, he's near and dear to me. He's one of my favorites. He's a great addition to this department, so look for him and his smiling face. He'll do a good job for you because he's been in the car with me, working with me every day. Like I said, he's been with us for about 3 months. Let's just drop right down. He has no prior police experience. He went to the police academy and then came to us. I'll note that he was like, I think, class president and one of the top recruits in his academy class, guys, so we got a good guy. One of his favorite foods are authentic green Hispanic chilies. And he has that background. And can you believe he hasn't brought his FTO any food?
No, and
we have to have a talk with him about that, right?
Yeah, you got to take care of the
we have a talk with him about that.
That's right.
His favorite book is The Way of the Warrior. It's a law enforcement book by Bernard Schaefer. One of his favorite movies, I bet we all say that we like, is Gladiator with Russell Crowe, which is an amazing movie. And another guy that likes your favorite music. Imagine, can you guess what that is? It's not R&B.
Yeah, it's not R&B.
Country
it's
Western.
Not jazz.
Another guy likes country Western music. Officer Rick's favorite.
Work on him. Work on him.
I'll work on him. I'll try. Some of his accomplishments and hobbies, guys. He's an avid fan of sports. He's played sports his whole life. He likes snowboarding and mountain biking. The guy's in phenomenal shape. So, like I said, guys, he'll do a great job for you as a policeman. His favorite quote is, "You can't afford to live your life with potential for the rest of your life. At some point, you have to unleash the potential and make your move." By Eric Thomas. I think that's a great quote for him, and it's indicative of his personality, guys. He's a welcome and great addition to our department. So, Phil, when you see this, we're happy to have you. Keep working hard. And we're going to turn off the spotlight on him today, and I'm going to turn it back over to my partner.
And you know, David, I have to admit, or Miguel, I'm sorry. I slipped. Yeah, I have to admit, I'm surprised that you said all those nice things about Phil Pacheco, because when he's in the room with us, you aren't the prettiest face in town anymore.
Yeah, I know. We've had that discussion, too. Yeah. He's a pretty boy, too, folks.
He is. Good kid, though. Real good kid. Folks, our safety tip of the day, please remember that, and we've talked a little bit about scams that we get over the phone, over the internet, people identifying themselves as the IRS or even the West Bloomfield Police Department. Remember, you get any scam, someone representing themselves as any form of government, and it's a scam. We're not going to call you and ask you for money. One of the recent ones going on, or has gone on, is one when someone's calling saying they represent the United States Government Grants Department. Folks, there's no such place. United States Federal Government Grants Department. There is no such department within the United States. And what they're asking people to do is, look, you know what? You're going to get $8,000 in benefits. We work for the federal government. We give these benefits. You're going to get $8,000, $10,000, whatever in benefits, but you have to pay the taxes on that. And in order to get those benefits, which are really going to help you, especially if you're struggling financially, you have to send us $600 to pay for those taxes. Folks, it's a scam. No one in any level of government is going to call you and tell you you have benefits coming to which you have to pay ahead of time in order to receive that money. Remember, especially if they identify themselves as the federal government, they're going to take whatever owes them before they ever send it to you anyway. So don't fall for it. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me or Officer David McNealy a call, and Crime Prevention will be sure to help you out in any way we can. Folks, don't go away. We are going to come back with our very special guest, Dr. Henry Maicki, Medical Director for Reverence Home Health and Hospice. Please come back.
You're watching West Bloomfield 911 on Civic Center TV, a service of the Greater West Bloomfield Cable Communications Commission. For more information or to watch episodes on demand, visit civiccentertv.com/WB911. Civic Center TV, television that's close to home.
After the tragic loss of an officer in the line of duty, Michigan Concerns of Police Survivors provide support to surviving law enforcement families and co-workers. To learn more about My Cops and upcoming events, or for information on how you can help, visit micops.org or call 877-464-2677.
Hello, and we are back. You're watching West Bloomfield 911. Again, my very special guest, our very special guest, Dr. Henry Maicki. Doc, it's so good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, sir.
You know,
Thanks for having
and
me.
if you don't mind, I'm going to joke around a little bit. With folks, some folks know we video record a lot of these shows over a 3-day period. We do like 12 shows, and you were so excited to come on West Bloomfield 911 that you came a day early yesterday.
That's right.
And,
That's right.
and I remember saying, "Hi, Doc, what are you doing here?" You invited me. I think that was tomorrow, Doc.
Yeah.
We've never had anyone so excited to be on our show.
Well, you're such a spectacular guy. I just had to get here as soon as possible.
There you go.
That's a good way to put it.
It'll be a great show from here on.
Yeah, right. Doc, it's a great pleasure to have you here, and just let the folks know that we first met, I believe it was at your church.
Yes, correct.
Shepherd King.
Shepherd King.
And you have a wonderful pastor there, and Pastor Tim Hoserlin, and a dear friend.
Yeah, Tim's a good guy.
He is. He's a great guy.
He truly is.
And also the chaplain of the fire department.
Yes.
And so then I did a presentation at your Rotary Club because you are the president there, correct?
I am, yes.
And so I did a presentation for you guys. So we've run into each other several times, and it's always a great pleasure to.
We're going to have
be
you
with
back, though.
All right, absolutely. I'd be glad to. Believe me, it was a great honor to be invited.
Thank you.
And I'm looking at, but what we were talking about, which really amazed me, and I thought, you know, this is, for me, as a police officer, you started out in medicine because you graduated from Wayne State University, which I will always have a little soft spot in my heart. My son graduated from there. But you graduated from their School of Medicine way back when. And you started out actually working in the beginning of life for people. You were an OB-GYN.
That is correct.
What made you choose that avenue of medicine?
Oh, that's a long story. When I was in medical school, I had an interest in childbirth. It was an attractive field for me. I got to know a lot of the doctors even before I was in residency. And so I had planned on going into obstetrics for several years before I actually started my residency. But during my internship, a general surgeon took me under his wing and, you know, encouraged me to think about general surgery. So I actually started a general surgery residency.
Oh, okay.
And but then I got this draft notice that said that you have an option. You can either apply for a commission or you can come in as a private. And this was during Vietnam.
Yes, yes.
So I thought I'd apply for a commission. So I went into the United States Army and went down to Fort Sam Houston, where I taught at the Medical Field Service School. But that was a 2-year hitch. Surgery was a 5-year residency. Obstetrics was a 3-year residency, and I figured 2 years in the service and 3 years, I haven't lost any time.
Right, right.
There you go.
And I liked obstetrics anyway. That had originally been my
Right.
my preference. So I came back in a OB-GYN residency.
And you know, and I did see on your bio that you did serve in the United States Army from 1965 to 1967. And
Thank you for your service.
David and
Well,
I would
thank you so
certainly
much.
like to thank you for your service to our country, and we appreciate all that you did, especially during that time. It was a very volatile time. Did you spend all your time in the States?
Yes, I did. I had a luxury assignment, so
Yeah.
I was at Fourth Army headquarters, Fort Sam Houston, and San Antonio, Texas. It was just, but it was an honor to be there.
Right.
And as I look back at it, you know, I almost think that everybody ought to be in the service,
I
at
would
least
agree.
for a short time.
I would agree.
Just to get the respect for what actually does go on.
Yeah.
Give something to the community.
Absolutely.
Gives you that base.
Well, David's dad, I know, served in the United States Marine Corps during Vietnam. My dad served for a period of time in the United States Army during World War II, so I know both of us have a great respect for guys like you that put on the federal uniform of a soldier or whatever aspect of the military you served in, so we thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, real quick, I just thought it was funny. My daughter graduated from vet school, and her partner also graduated from vet school, but was in the Army. And did you find it interesting, her form of boot camp was not the normal form of boot camp like your dad would have went through. She said it was mostly like learning how to put the uniform together, and she said it was really kind of funny teaching us to march and handle guns, and because they were all doctors, vets, dentists. And
Right.
did you find your?
Yeah, I did. It was pretty soft, but we did have to go through the infiltration course, you know, and we were crawling on our stomachs there with live
Live
ammunition
fire.
going
Live rounds
over it.
going
If
over
you
your
raise
head,
your
oh
butt
boy.
just a little bit too high, you go. So yeah, I got a taste of
Yeah.
what real boot camp is. But then I actually stayed there, and I saw other doctors come in and go through the same infiltration
Yeah.
course. So I saw it from both perspectives, as an instructor as well as a participant.
Well, I guess if you're a doctor or a vet in the Army, and or you know, and you have to start shooting, things are really getting tough. You know, they depend on you to take care of those
I'll
guys.
never
Putting
forget
people
the
back
time.
together.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the time a sergeant took me in. I was learning to fire the .45. And, you know, I'm going like this, shooting this ball. You're going to up to see. And he says, Doc, listen, you just hold that thing in like this. Make sure you keep your hand out of there. And you just keep pulling that trigger. I'm right behind you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, you had 2 years of tasting Army life, and then you came back out and you started your civilian career as a doctor, and you started as OB-GYN. Talk a little bit about that. I guess some of your experiences, the motivation, and how you felt being able to really help people at the very beginning of life, coming into this world healthy and safe and happy.
One of the things that I had learned as I was going through med school and taking histories and physicals from patients, that at that time, patients totally trusted their physician.
Different
And
era,
they'd say,
yeah.
have you had any surgery? And they'd say, yes, I've had surgery. And I would say, well, what kind of surgery? I don't know. Doctor said I needed an operation, and I had it. And they had no idea of what kind, and I thought that was so wrong.
Yeah.
So I was always trying to educate my patients about various aspects of this. And when you get into childbirth, that's a scary time for women,
Right.
especially for the first time they're going through it. And also if they've had situations where they've had a previous cesarean section or
Yeah.
a bad outcome or any of that type thing, it's a very frightening time for them. And yet, you know, they all look forward to
They're
it.
excited too.
Yeah, excited and at the same time a little bit scared.
Right.
So just working with them to keep them in control as much as possible. Although there's no controlling labor. Once it gets started, it's going to happen.
Right. Right.
So just working with them and trying to give them confidence in their ability to go through
Doc,
was
something
a
I'm
great thing.
curious about is do you have a number count of how many babies, how many children you've delivered?
Yeah, it's something in excess of 10,000.
It's a lot of kids that
Yes, yeah.
you had a
Wow.
hand in bringing into the world.
Right. Yeah, we had a very active practice,
I
and
see.
we worked many hours.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, you know, and one thing I noticed on your bio, you were working as an intern at Providence Hospital in Southfield, and that was a place where I came into the world. But Since David is always inclined to remind me how old I am, it was actually in Detroit in those days.
The hospital.
Yeah, Providence was originally on the boulevard in Detroit, not far from current Henry Ford in Detroit.
That's where I started my internship.
In Detroit?
On the boulevard.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yes.
So, all right, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I was at.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably one of their biggest mistakes, was allowing me to come home from there. But don't agree with them.
No, I can't get up from the table, so I'm not gonna.
But you spent so you spent some time over at Providence, and then where did you go from there?
Well, I did my residency there at Providence Hospital. I started a practice at Providence Hospital, went into with a couple other of my mentors that I was very proud to serve with, Dr. Joseph Watts and James Smigan. It was an honor to be with them. Next thing that I did is hearing the situation where women were looking for home births and feeling that that had dangers that were above the call of appropriateness.
Yeah.
I looked for a way to lessen the way
risk.
for the advantage or the interest in this. So we actually started the Started Family Birthing Center, which was a very home-like birth, and it was actually in a nursing home that was attached to the hospital when we first started it. So it was the first in the state to
Wow.
have that type of thing. And it was totally natural. We didn't have monitors, and we didn't use Pitocin, and we had midwives that were there to
Right.
help the patients through it. But a lot of it was in the coaching that goes on through the labor process.
You know, a couple of things you mentioned that I found interesting. One, when you started, very few men went into the birthing room with the wife.
Right.
Talk a little bit about how that changed over the years. I know I was there for each one of my kids being born.
Mm-hmm.
What was that part of the home birthing movement as well?
It was part of it. When I first started doing obstetrics, the husbands were out in the father's waiting room.
I was
and
one of them. I didn't want to see it. I didn't. And then just to add on to that, my wife's doctor was a male, and I was like, I'm gonna be out in the hallway, and he says, "Come in here and see this." I said, "I don't want to see that." And he says, "Get in here and see this." And finally, I poked my head, and I saw my son's
Born.
full head of hair. I go, "Oh my God, push!" You know. It started from there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I only had good experiences with husbands being there, and really what got me interested in it is I was going to try it one time. So I had this one husband that I wanted to come in, and I said, "Okay, come on in, and let's." I didn't say let's find out what's going to happen, but that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, you want to rephrase that a little
and
bit.
this gentleman got such a thrill out of watching his baby being born.
Yeah,
And he was giddy with joy.
yeah, absolutely.
And I said, if it's that good, it's got to be.
Sure.
And I was a big proponent of it thereafter.
Well, speaking as a father who was there for all three of his kids, and my two daughters were, normal delivery, where my son was a cesarean, and I got to tell you, for each one of them, those were three of the best days of my life, was watching those kids come into the world.
Now, see, I didn't watch my children being born. I sat out and watched the baseball game.
That's good too.
He still does a good job, folks. He still did a good job.
And back in those days, you could smoke in the waiting room in the hospital. It was a whole different world.
At that time, I did smoke
Yeah.
too.
Maybe I shouldn't say, but I remember when you were talking about going through the classes that a lot of the women go through. I know my wife, and I don't know how your wife felt, David. I know my wife and I went to the birthing classes, and she did those breathing techniques, the he-hoos, hoo-ha's, or whatever they call it. And, and I was helping her, and she said that was, it really helped with the birthing process. And
Some
so
people
it was
like
cool.
it, some people don't. But
Yeah.
it sounds like you were on the cutting edge, if you will, on some of the things, like if you look at the facilities and hospitals today, whether the father can stay overnight, and they made accommodations for families. So it sounds like, Doc, that you were on the cutting edge of a lot of that stuff.
Very much so. I was.
That's
on the
pretty
cutting
amazing.
edge,
Are you
yeah.
how do you feel about seeing some of the things come to fruition that you introduced almost?
Well, you know, it makes you proud that say I knew something at the time.
Yeah, you had it right. Obviously, you had it right.
Exactly.
And you probably got some pushback from some of the more traditional doctors that were older in those days.
Yeah, I did lectures on natural childbirth in several different states at the time, and I got a lot of pushback.
I'll bet.
You were just causing tears of the perineum, and it's women are going to have prolapsed uteruses and all this kind of stuff, and they were accusing me of all types of horrendous things. And the reality is, they were causing more of it than I was.
Well, and you know, and it really goes to you, as you said, you spoke to these people and everything. You were giving presentations, and of course, I know you're aware. And really, what does the term doctor mean? It's a Latin term, means teacher. So you actually lived that title as teacher, not just in practice, but also to other doctors. So.
One of the things that we did teach, we taught women who had had a previous cesarean section. We did a series of talks with them to help them gain confidence in their body, because there's a certain amount of loss of confidence in their body when they have to have a C-section.
Right.
And so we did various lectures and workouts with them. And our C-section rate, for the second time, I also started that. I did the first vaginal birth after cesarean section.
Because at one time, it wasn't the general medical knowledge is once a C-section, always a C-section.
Doc, there's got to be some fear associated with that also for the patient too, right? So I imagine that you physically had to get them ready and had to also talk to them about mentally getting ready for it, right?
Absolutely. Getting them so that they were not uptight, so that they could relax and
That puts
have
stress
trust
on
in
them
their
and
body.
the child, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, you came in the beginning stages of your career, bringing new life into the world, and God bless you for that. That's very important. And I know with the doctors that my wife and I have had, you know, they did good jobs, and we really appreciate, because you hear some horror stories, but we're very fortunate with our doctors, so we thank you for all that. But as you went through your career, all of a sudden, now in the twilight of your career, somehow you decided, you know what, I help people come into the world, now I'm going to help as they prepare to leave the world. Right. I was going to say help take them out, but that didn't sound right. So
No, that's not a good way to put it.
Cop, take them out, not good.
Well, let's talk about the change. And I mean, it also requires a certain change of mentality and thinking on your part. Talk about how you came into that part of your life.
Okay, actually I started getting interested in end-of-life issues while I was still doing obstetrics, early in my obstetric career. I recall one patient that had a stillborn baby, and I was making rounds the day after the birth of this stillborn baby. And I went to her room, and I looked in the room, and she was laying in bed, and she had her eyes closed. She was facing the doorway, and I could see that her eyes were closed. And I thought, oh, I think maybe I won't, you know, wake her up and just let her rest. And as I walked past the room, I said to myself, no, that's wrong. Somebody has to know how to deal with these kinds of things. And that's not something that was taught in medical school or residency or any of my education during that time. So I did go back and I talked to her, and then I started reading on it, and since I was also very involved with the residency program at Providence Hospital, I started lecturing on it. Then a few years later came a course put out by the American Medical Association, Education for Physicians on End-of-Life Care. And I took the trainer course on that. And then I started lecturing, and I'm still doing obstetrics during all this and all early life care. Then I started lecturing, and then somebody came up with this term palliative care, and I said, what in the world is palliative care? So there's this conference. We want you to go to this conference, and there's a grant that we could apply for. So I went to the conference, we applied for the grant, and we started our palliative care program at Providence Hospital. And so that was a great thing. At that point, we had a nurse that was the palliative care team. She was all alone at that time. And then she decided to move on, and suddenly we had no one. And I said, we can't let this program die. So I became the palliative care until we got another nurse. We now have a very active palliative care program at the hospital. But while I'm doing this, another doctor comes up to me who had been doing hospice. And since I had been lecturing on this for almost 10 years at the time, he came up and he said, you know, my wife says I need to be home more because we have these young children. So I need to turn this over to you to do hospice. And I said, I can't do hospice. I'm an OB-GYN doctor. He says, no, you can do it. So I said, well, he said, come on, make rounds with me for a while. So I did. And within a couple of weeks, he was gone, and there I was. So, but, you know, I've learned that my mission really in early life and my mission in end of life is to help people with these difficult times, these times where their body or their mind is being stressed, and take them to a comfort area and work their way through these difficult times. I really see a lot of similarities in the end of life because they are the most stressful times of life. They're also the most spiritual times of life.
Yeah, I would
It's a
agree
great,
with that.
I will tell you this, from the start of your career to now, one thing that's consistent, it seems like with you, is that level of care. And that's so important in the beginning of life and at the end of life. Both my parents have passed away, and unfortunately, we've had to call hospice. And each time, each parent, I felt very comforted knowing that hospice was there, and the nurses that had contact and the physicians that had contact with my loved ones had that level of care, and it's important to have that.
You know, Doc, we only have a couple seconds, and just real quick, because we only have a few seconds left, is there something like you'd like to tell the public about end-of-life care or end-of-life issues?
Yes. The main thing is that I don't care how old the patient is, you are as the public, but you need to tell your family, your loved ones, your trusted associates, how you feel about care during at the end of life. So many times we have families that are afraid to discontinue some of the aggressive treatments, and the patient ends up on a ventilator or being treated very aggressively with virtually no hope of ever really recovering.
Yep.
And if it's talked about and the people understand your goals, and those are the ones that are
It's not a
important.
comfortable subject, but you're telling family members to
Absolutely.
talk it over.
Talk it over, exactly.
Absolutely, and as my wife, or my mother, not my wife, she'll kill me if she sees this, but as my mother is elderly, and we go through that, and thank goodness my brother and I have spoken with my mother, so we understand what she wants, and you're absolutely right. Doctor, thank you for all you've done throughout the years, both on the birth side and in the end of life stage of life. We thank you for everything you've done, and I could tell you were the type of person you are the first time I met
We
you.
got to have him back to talk about the Rotary too.
Folks, let's talk about an officer who has given up his life in the line of duty. So please look on your screen. You will see Sergeant Michael Allen Scarborough of the Wayne County Airport Authority Police Department, who was killed in the line of duty on February 9th, 2005. Please remember Sergeant Scarborough in your thoughts and in your prayers. Sergeant Scarborough was killed in an automobile accident on I-94 during a period of snow and icy conditions. The collision occurred when the department vehicle he was a passenger in went off the roadway. The vehicle struck a utility pole in the highway median. Sergeant Scarborough and another sergeant in the same vehicle were both transported to St. Joseph Mercy Hospital, where the good sergeant succumbed to his injuries. Now we remember Sergeant Scarborough today because he is a great American hero, and he has the unhappy distinction of being the only Airport Authority police officer in the state of Michigan killed in line of duty, and we hope and pray he will be the last. He had served with the agency for 17 years. He's survived by his wife and 3 children, and I got to tell you, I know David and I have both come to know his wife, Denise. She's now the president of My Cops, which is a great organization that helps families in situations where an officer has died in the line of duty. So what a wonderful family, great hero in Sergeant Scarborough and a great woman in Denise. So please remember in your thoughts and in your prayers Sergeant Michael Allen Scarborough of the Wayne County Airport Authority Police Department, as well as his wife Denise and the rest of his family. And we say, rest in peace, brother. Your memory will never be forgotten. Again, folks, thank you for watching. Remember, you can catch West Bloomfield 911 on Civic Center TV. You can also watch us on civiccentertv.com. And don't forget, you can also go to YouTube. Put in West Bloomfield 911. You'll get to see all of our shows. Please keep in touch with the police department as well. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. And soon, Snapchat will be coming as an available option for you as well. And if you really want to know what's going on in the township, don't forget to sign up for Nixle and Crime Mapping, and you'll get to hear all the stories that you need to know about what's happening in your township. It is my great pleasure to once again thank Dr. Henry Maicki, Medical Director of Reverence Home Health and Hospice. Doc, thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming on. And as always, my friend and my partner, Miguel, also known as Officer David McNealy. And once again, we thank you for watching. Please take care of each other, be safe, and love one another. Remember, tomorrow is promised to no one. I'm Officer Rick, and we'll see you again on West Bloomfield 911.